Some people spend their whole lives searching for the person who makes them feel complete. Ethan Walker spent 8 years standing beside her, and never saw it until the night he accidentally asked her to marry him as a joke. The punchline? She didn't laugh. And in that terrible, beautiful silence, everything they thought they knew about friendship shattered completely. Like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The bookshelf arrived in a box that weighed approximately nothing and contained approximately 1,000 pieces of compressed particle board held together by hope and terrible instructions. Claire Bennett stood in the middle of her penthouse living room, staring at the cardboard disaster spread across her marble floor, and seriously considered just buying furniture that came pre-assembled like a normal billionaire. But that wasn't how Claire operated. She built things herself. She always had. That philosophy had earned her a tech company valued at $1.2 billion before she turned 30. It had also earned her a reputation as someone who didn't need help with anything, ever, which was mostly true and occasionally exhausting. Tonight, it was just annoying. She nudged a piece of laminated wood with her toe and checked her phone. Ethan had texted 20 minutes ago saying he was leaving the restaurant, which meant he'd be here soon, smelling like fryer grease and exhaustion because he'd just finished a double shift and was still driving across the city to help her put together a $60 bookshelf she didn't even need. Claire walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. She didn't know why she'd called him. That was a lie. She knew exactly why. Because Ethan Walker was the only person in her life who made her feel like a human being instead of a performance. He was the only one who'd ever looked at her and seen Claire instead of the CEO, the success story, the woman who had everything figured out. He'd been seeing that version of her for 8 years, ever since they'd met at a terrible networking event where she'd been giving a keynote and he'd been working the catering table, trying not to spill champagne on venture capitalists. They'd gotten stuck in the service elevator together for 45 minutes. She'd panicked. He'd made jokes until she stopped hyperventilating. They'd been best friends ever since, which was insane, considering how different their lives were. Claire lived in a penthouse with smart lights and a view that cost more per month than most people's salaries. Ethan lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, and a refrigerator that only worked if you kicked it twice. Claire ran board meetings and fielded acquisition offers. Ethan ran between double shifts at the restaurant and parent-teacher conferences, patching together a life that never quite had enough hours or money. But somehow, it worked. Somehow, they worked. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Parking now. Please tell me you made real coffee this time. Claire smiled despite herself. Claire. I made coffee. Ethan. Real coffee? Claire. It's coffee adjacent. Ethan. I'm going back to the car. She was still smiling when the elevator chimed and Ethan stepped into her apartment, looking exactly like someone who'd spent the last 10 hours on his feet. His dark hair was messy, his t-shirt had a grease stain near the collar, and he had that specific kind of tired in his eyes that came from being a single parent who never stopped moving. He was also carrying a toolbox that looked older than both of them combined. You know you could have just hired someone to do this, Ethan said, dropping the toolbox on the floor and eyeing the scattered bookshelf pieces with deep suspicion. I could have, Claire agreed, but then I wouldn't get to watch you struggle with incomprehensible Swedish instructions. Pretty sure these are Chinese. Even better. Ethan snorted and shrugged off his jacket, tossing it onto her pristine white couch in a way that would have made her interior designer weep. Claire didn't care. She liked the way his stuff looked in her space, real and worn and lived in. She handed him a mug of coffee. He took one sip and made a face like she'd poisoned him. This is water with trauma, he said. It's single origin, ethically sourced. It tastes like someone described coffee to an alien. Claire snatched the mug back. You're welcome. Ethan grinned, and for a second the exhaustion lifted from his face completely. That was the thing about Ethan. He could be dead on his feet and still find a way to make her laugh. They settled onto the floor beside the disaster zone of bookshelf parts, and Ethan immediately started sorting pieces into piles that made no logical sense, but somehow seemed to calm him. How was Lily tonight? Claire asked, because she always asked. Good. She made me a card. Another one? She's prolific. Ethan pulled his phone out and showed Claire a photo of a construction paper masterpiece covered in glitter and uneven hearts. The front said, Best Dad, in purple marker. Claire's chest did something stupid and painful. She's perfect, Claire said quietly. She's 7, and she put glitter in my coffee this morning, so perfect is generous. But Ethan's voice was soft, and Claire knew he'd frame that card the second he got home, just like he'd framed all the others. Ethan had been raising Lily alone since she was 2, after his ex-girlfriend decided motherhood wasn't for her and disappeared with barely a goodbye. Claire had watched him struggle through those early years, the daycare juggling, the bills he couldn't quite pay, the nightmares about failing his daughter. He'd never failed her once. She asked about you today, Ethan added, squinting at the instruction sheet like it had personally insulted him. Yeah? Yeah, I wanted to know when you're coming over for dinner again. Tell her I'll bring dessert. She'll hold you to that. Claire smiled. Good. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, passing tools back and forth, and occasionally arguing about which piece went where. Ethan insisted the instructions were wrong. Claire insisted he was holding the diagram upside down. They were both right, somehow. An hour in, the bookshelf looked less like furniture and more like a modern art installation about human suffering. This is hopeless, Claire said, leaning back against the couch. It's not hopeless. It's just Swedish. Same thing. Ethan laughed, and the sound filled her apartment in a way that made the space feel less empty. Claire's penthouse was beautiful. Everyone said so. But it never felt like home. It felt like a magazine spread, a showroom. When Ethan was here, it felt different. It felt real. Can I ask you something? Ethan said suddenly, not looking at her. Always. Why do you keep going on dates with guys who bore you? Claire blinked. Excuse me? That venture capital guy last month, the one who talked about his marathon training for 2 hours. How do you know about him? You texted me halfway through dinner asking if faking a medical emergency was socially acceptable. It was a legitimate question. Ethan finally looked at her, and his expression was harder to read than usual. You do this thing where you go out with these perfect-on-paper guys, and then you come home and complain that they don't get you, but you never actually date anyone who gets you. Claire's stomach twisted. Maybe guys who get me don't exist. That's bullshit. Excuse me? Claire, you're brilliant and weird, and you laugh at terrible jokes, and you stress bake at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep. You're not hard to get. You just don't let people close enough to try. The words hit harder than they should have, because he was right. She didn't let people close. She'd spent so many years building walls to protect herself. First from failure, then from people who only wanted her money or her connections or the story they could tell about knowing her. Ethan was the only one who'd ever climbed over those walls without asking permission. What about you? Claire shot back, her voice sharper than she meant it to be. You've been on what? 6 dates in the last 2 months? And every single one of them was nice and normal and perfectly fine, and you still don't call them back. Ethan looked away. That's different. How? Because I have Lily to think about. I can't just bring random people into her life. So you're going to be alone forever? I'm not alone. You know what I mean. Ethan's jaw tightened. Maybe I just haven't found the right person yet. Or maybe you're scared, Claire said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable, and Claire immediately wished she could take the words back. But Ethan didn't look angry. He just looked tired. Yeah, he said finally. Maybe I am. They didn't talk for a while after that. They just kept working on the bookshelf, handing each other pieces in silence, and Claire hated the tension sitting between them like a third person in the room. By midnight, the bookshelf was almost finished. It was crooked. Ethan stepped back and tilted his head, frowning. Is it supposed to lean like that? I think it adds character. It adds a safety hazard. Claire laughed despite herself, and just like that, the tension cracked. Ethan grinned, and they both collapsed onto the floor, staring up at their disaster of a creation. You know what your problem is? Ethan said, his voice lazy and warm. I have a feeling you're about to tell me. You overthink everything. You're so busy trying to find the perfect person that you miss the ones who are already there. Claire turned her head to look at him. And what's your problem? But go all right. Mom. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know. I think maybe I'm just waiting for something that feels right, and nothing ever does. Claire's chest tightened, because she knew exactly what he meant. She'd felt that way for years, like she was waiting for something just out of reach, something she couldn't quite name. "You know what you should do?" Ethan said, suddenly sitting up. "What?" "You should just marry me." The words came out light and easy, like a joke, but Claire didn't laugh. She just stared at him, and Ethan's grin faltered. "Claire?" Her heart was doing something absolutely insane in her chest, pounding too fast, too hard, like it was trying to break through her ribs. "That's not funny," she said quietly. Ethan blinked, his expression shifting into something confused and almost panicked. "I was kidding." "I know." But her voice didn't sound like she knew. It sounded shaky and raw and far too honest. Ethan stared at her, and for one terrible, breathtaking second, Claire saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked like recognition, like realization, like fear. Then he looked away. "Sorry," he muttered. "Bad joke." Claire forced herself to breathe. "Yeah, bad joke." But neither of them moved. They just sat there on the floor of her too-perfect apartment, surrounded by the pieces of a bookshelf that didn't quite fit together, and Claire felt the entire world shift sideways, because she'd spent 8 years pretending she didn't feel this. 8 years pretending Ethan was just her best friend. 8 years lying to herself. And in one stupid, careless moment, he'd shattered every carefully constructed wall she'd built. "I should go," Ethan said quietly, standing up too fast. "Ethan, it's late, and I have to pick up Lily early tomorrow." He wasn't looking at her. Claire stood, her legs unsteady. "You don't have to leave." "Yeah, I do." He grabbed his jacket and his toolbox, moving toward the elevator like he couldn't get out fast enough, and Claire felt something crack open in her chest, something desperate and terrified. "Ethan, wait." He stopped, but he didn't turn around. "It's fine," he said, his voice tight. "I'll see you later, okay?" Then he was gone, and Claire stood alone in her apartment, staring at the crooked bookshelf, and realized with absolute certainty that nothing between them would ever be the same again. Ishket. The next 3 days were torture. Ethan didn't call. He didn't text. And Claire didn't know what to say, so she didn't reach out either. She threw herself into work, back-to-back meetings, investor calls, product launches, anything to stop thinking about the way Ethan had looked at her before he left. But it didn't work, because every night she came home to that stupid bookshelf, still crooked, still unfinished. And every night she stared at it and thought about what he'd said. "Maybe you should just marry me." It had been a joke. She knew it had been a joke. But the way her heart had seized in her chest, the way her entire body had gone still, like every cell in her body had been waiting for him to say those words, that hadn't been a joke. That had been real. On the 4th day, Claire broke. She texted him. "Claire, we need to talk." He didn't respond for 2 hours. When he finally did, it was short. "Ethan, I know." "Claire, my place? Tonight?" "Ethan, I'll be there." Ethan showed up at 8, looking like he hadn't slept. Claire opened the door, and they just stood there for a second, staring at each other like strangers. "Hi," Claire said. "Hi." Neither of them moved. Then Ethan stepped inside, and Claire closed the door behind him, her hands shaking. They didn't sit. They just stood in the middle of her living room, the crooked bookshelf looming in the corner like a silent witness. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "About the other night. I shouldn't have." "Don't." He stopped. Claire took a breath, her heart hammering. "Don't apologize, because if you apologize, then we're going to pretend it didn't happen, and I can't do that anymore." Ethan's eyes widened. "Claire, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "And I need you to just let me say it, okay? Because if I don't say it now, I never will." He nodded, his face pale. Claire closed her eyes. Then she said the thing she'd been too terrified to admit for 8 years. "I'm in love with you." The words fell into the room like stones. "I've been in love with you for so long I don't even remember when it started. And I know that's not fair because you're my best friend, and I'm probably ruining everything by saying this, but I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep watching you date other people and pretending it doesn't kill me. I can't keep acting like this is enough when it's not. It's never been enough." But her voice cracked. "So there it is. I love you, and I don't know what to do with that. She opened her eyes. Ethan was staring at her like she'd just set his entire world on fire. Say something, Claire whispered. But he didn't. He just stood there, frozen, his chest rising and falling too fast. And then, without a word, he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him, and Claire stood alone in the silence, her heart in pieces on the floor. Ethan made it to his car before the panic hit. He sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing while his brain tried to catch up with what had just happened. Claire loved him. Claire was in love with him. The words kept replaying in his head, over and over, and every time they did, his chest tightened a little more until he couldn't breathe properly. He started the engine because sitting still felt impossible, and he drove without thinking about where he was going. The city blurred past in streaks of light and shadow, and Ethan's mind raced in 1,000 different directions at once. 8 years. She'd said she'd been in love with him for 8 years. He pulled into a gas station parking lot and cut the engine, his hands shaking. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were best friends. They'd always been best friends. That was the one constant in his life that made sense. Claire was the person he could talk to about anything, the person who understood him when no one else did, the person who made everything feel less impossible. And now she'd just blown that apart. Or had she? Ethan pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to think clearly, but his thoughts were a mess. Because the thing was, the absolutely terrifying thing, he couldn't say he was surprised. Not really. There'd been moments over the years, small things. The way Claire smiled at him sometimes, soft and unguarded. The way she always made time for him no matter how insane her schedule got. The way she looked at Lily like she was something precious. He'd noticed, and he'd ignored it, because acknowledging it would have meant admitting something he wasn't ready to face. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, half expecting it to be Claire, but it was just a notification from his bank account reminding him his rent was due in 3 days. Perfect timing. Ethan shoved the phone back in his pocket and leaned his head against the steering wheel. He didn't know what to do. Going back to Claire's apartment felt impossible, but so did going home and pretending this conversation hadn't happened. So he just sat there in the parking lot, alone, while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and his entire world tilted sideways. When he finally drove home an hour later, Lily was already asleep. The babysitter, Mrs. Chen from downstairs, gave him a concerned look but didn't ask questions, which Ethan appreciated because he didn't have answers. He paid her, locked the door behind her, and stood in the middle of his cramped living room, staring at the drawings Lily had taped to the walls. There were dozens of them, crayon families, purple houses, a lopsided dog that might have been a horse. And in the corner, half hidden behind the couch, was a drawing of 3 people holding hands. Ethan walked over and pulled it down. The tallest figure had messy brown hair. That was him. The smallest one had pigtails and a huge smile. That was Lily. And the one in the middle, with long hair and a dress covered in stars, was labeled in wobbly letters, Claire. Ethan's throat closed up. Lily had drawn them as a family. He sank onto the couch, still holding the picture, and the weight of everything hit him all at once. He'd been lying to himself for years, because the truth was, every woman he dated had failed for the same reason. They weren't Claire. They didn't make him laugh the way she did. They didn't understand his life. They didn't look at Lily like she mattered. And every single time a relationship ended, Ethan had told himself it just wasn't the right fit, that he'd find someone eventually, that he just needed to keep trying. But he'd never been looking for someone. He'd been looking for her, and she'd been right there the whole time. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Claire. Claire. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Please don't hate me. Ethan stared at the message, his chest aching. Then he typed back, Ethan, I don't hate you. I just need time to think. Her response came immediately. Claire. Okay. That was it. Just one word. But Ethan could feel the weight of everything she wasn't saying behind it. He set the phone down and buried his face in his hands. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Lily bounced into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks and a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it, completely oblivious to the fact that Ethan's entire life was falling apart. Can we have pancakes? She asked, climbing onto a chair. Sure, Ethan said automatically, pulling out the mix. The dinosaur-shaped ones? I don't think we have a dinosaur mold, kid. Then we should make one. Ethan smiled despite himself. I'll add it to the list. Lily swung her legs and watched him mix the batter with the kind of intense focus only 7-year-olds could manage. Is Claire coming over soon? She asked. Ethan's hand stilled. I don't know. She hasn't been here in forever. It's been a week. That's forever. Ethan poured the batter into the pan and didn't answer. Lily tilted her head, her expression too perceptive for someone who still believed in the tooth fairy. Did you have a fight? No, we didn't fight. Then why does your face look sad? My face doesn't look sad. Yes, it does. It looks like when you burned the spaghetti and we had to eat cereal for dinner. Ethan snorted. That was one time. It was really bad spaghetti, Dad. He flipped the pancake and glanced at her. I'm fine, Lily. I promise. She didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. They ate breakfast together in comfortable silence, and Ethan tried not to think about how many times Claire had sat at this same table, laughing at Lily's terrible jokes and stealing bites of his food. After he dropped Lily off at school, Ethan went to work and spent the entire shift moving on autopilot. He took orders, ran food, cleaned tables, and smiled at customers, but his brain was somewhere else entirely. By the time his shift ended, he still didn't know what to do. He sat in his car in the restaurant parking lot and pulled out his phone. No new messages from Claire. He opened their text thread and scrolled up, reading through months of conversations, late-night messages about nothing, photos of Lily's drawings, complaints about work, stupid memes, and underneath all of it, something he'd never let himself see before. They talked like people who loved each other, not like friends, like people who were already in love and just didn't have the words for it yet. Ethan's hands were shaking again. He needed to talk to someone, not Claire, not yet. He scrolled through his contacts and stopped on a name he hadn't called in months. Marcus had been Ethan's roommate in college, back before life got complicated. They'd stayed in touch over the years, but barely. Occasional texts, holiday messages, the kind of friendship that existed mostly in theory. But Marcus was also the only person Ethan knew who might actually understand what he was going through. He hit call before he could talk himself out of it. Marcus picked up on the third ring. Ethan Walker, did someone die, or are you finally admitting you need help moving furniture? Neither. So then why are you calling me at 2 in the afternoon on a weekday? Don't you have a job? I just got off shift. And you immediately thought, I should call Marcus? I'm touched. Ethan rubbed his face. I need advice. There was a pause. Then Marcus said in a completely different tone, what happened? My best friend told me she's in love with me. Another pause. Claire? Yeah. The billionaire? She's not a billionaire. Her company's valued at... Ethan, focus. She told you she loves you. What did you say? I left. You what? I panicked and I left. Marcus groaned. You're an idiot. I know. Do you love her? The question hit harder than it should have. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. I don't know, he said finally. That's a lie. Marcus, you've been talking about this woman for 8 years. Every time we've talked, it's Claire did this, or Claire said that, or Claire helped me with Lily. You're obsessed with her. I'm not obsessed. You drove across the city at midnight to help her assemble a bookshelf. She needed help. She's a billionaire. She could have hired someone. That's not the point. Exactly, that's not the point. The point is, she wanted you there, and you wanted to be there because you're in love with her, and you've been too scared to admit it. Ethan's throat tightened. I can't. Why not? Because what if it doesn't work? What if we try this and it falls apart and I lose her completely? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said gently, what if it does work? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Look, Marcus continued, I don't know Claire, but I know you, and I know you've been half alive for years, man. Every time you've tried to date someone, it's been a disaster because you're comparing them to someone they'll never be. And now that person just told you she feels the same way, and you're running scared because you think you don't deserve it. I don't. Why? Because you're broke? Because you're a single dad? Because your life isn't perfect? Yes. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Ethan laughed despite himself, the sound rough and broken. You're a good guy, Ethan, Marcus said quietly. And if she loves you, it's because she sees that. So stop punishing yourself for not being good enough and just let yourself be happy for once. Ethan closed his eyes. I don't know if I can. Eesh. Then figure it out. But don't wait too long. Because if you lose her because you were too scared to try, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. They hung up a few minutes later, and Ethan sat alone in his car, staring at his phone. Marcus was right. He knew Marcus was right. But knowing it and actually doing something about it were two completely different things. He drove home, picked up Lily from after-school care, and spent the evening trying to act normal. They made dinner together, spaghetti, which Lily reminded him not to burn, and watched a movie about talking animals that Ethan didn't pay attention to. When Lily finally went to bed, Ethan sat on the couch and pulled out his phone. He opened his messages, and he started typing. Ethan, can we talk? Not tonight. I'm not ready yet. But soon. Claire's response came almost instantly. Claire, whenever you're ready, I'm here. Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Then he set the phone down and tried to sleep. The next few days were some of the strangest of Ethan's life. He went through the motions, work, Lily, repeat. But everything felt off balance, like he was walking on a floor that wasn't quite level. He kept thinking about Claire, about the way she'd looked when she said she loved him. Vulnerable and terrified and heartbreakingly honest. He thought about all the years they'd spent together. The late-night calls when he couldn't sleep. The way she showed up for Lily's school events even when she had board meetings. The way she'd learned to make terrible coffee just because Ethan complained about hers. And he thought about all the relationships that had failed because he'd been too afraid to admit what he really wanted. On the 5th day, he broke. It was late, almost midnight, and Lily was asleep, and Ethan was sitting on the couch, staring at the drawing she'd made of the three of them. His phone was in his hand before he realized what he was doing. He didn't call Claire. He texted her. Ethan, the reason nobody else ever felt right is because they weren't you. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he waited. 1 minute, 2, 3. His phone rang. Claire's name lit up the screen, and Ethan's heart stopped. He answered, Claire, where are you? Her voice was shaking. Home. Why? I'm coming over. Now? Yes, now. Claire, it's midnight. I don't care. The line went dead. Ethan sat there staring at his phone, his pulse racing. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at his door. He opened it, and Claire was standing in the hallway, wearing sweatpants and a jacket she'd clearly thrown on in a hurry. Her hair was a mess, and she wasn't wearing any makeup, and she looked absolutely terrified. Hi, she said breathlessly. Hi. They stood there staring at each other. Then Claire said, Can I come in? Ethan stepped aside, and she walked into his apartment, her hand shaking. He closed the door. Neither of them moved. You meant it, Claire said finally. That text. You meant it. Yeah. Say it again. Ethan's throat was dry. The reason nobody else ever felt right. Not the text, the real thing. He stared at her, and then he said the words he'd been too scared to admit. I'm in love with you. Claire's breath hitched. I think I've been in love with you for years, Ethan continued, his voice rough. I just didn't let myself see it, because I was scared. Because I thought you deserved better than some broke single dad who can barely keep his life together. Because I didn't think I could be what you needed. Ethan, but you're all I think about. Every time I go on a date, I'm comparing them to you. Every time something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. And every time I try to imagine my future, you're in it. You and Lily. That's what I want. That's what I've always wanted. Claire's eyes were shining. I don't care that you're broke, she said, her voice breaking. I don't care that your life is messy. I don't care about any of that. I just care about you. Ethan stepped forward. I'm going to screw this up, he said quietly. I'm going to be bad at this. I'm going to panic and overthink everything and probably drive you crazy. I don't care. Claire, I love you, she said fiercely. I love you exactly the way you are, messy and scared and imperfect. I don't want some perfect version of you. I just want you. And then she kissed him. It wasn't smooth or cinematic or anything like the movies. It was desperate and clumsy and 8 years overdue. Ethan's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and Claire's fingers tangled in his hair, and for the first time in years, everything felt right. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "We're doing this," Claire said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Ethan said, "we're doing this. I'm terrified." "Me too." She laughed, and the sound was shaky and beautiful. They stood there in his cramped living room, holding each other, and Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd finally stopped running. Claire ended up staying the night. Not in the way that sounded. She crashed on Ethan's couch because it was too late to drive home, and they stayed up talking until almost 3 in the morning. They talked about everything they'd been too scared to say before, about the years they'd spent pretending, about the moments they'd almost confessed, about the future they both wanted but had been too afraid to hope for. And when Ethan finally fell asleep, Claire curled up on the couch with a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent, and he felt lighter than he had in years. The next morning, Lily woke up early and wandered into the living room, rubbing her eyes. She stopped dead when she saw Claire asleep on the couch. Then she looked at Ethan, who was making coffee in the kitchen, and her entire face lit up. "Is Claire sleeping over?" she whispered loudly. "Shh." "Yeah. She got here late. Are you guys friends again?" Ethan paused. Then he crouched down to Lily's level and said carefully, "Actually, we need to talk to you about something." Lily's eyes went wide. "Are you getting married?" "What? No. Then what?" Before Ethan could answer, Claire stirred on the couch and sat up, her hair sticking up in 5 different directions. She blinked at them. "Morning." "Claire!" Lily launched herself at the couch, and Claire caught her laughing. "Hey, kiddo." "Dad says you guys need to talk to me about something. Are you moving in?" Claire looked at Ethan, panicked. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Lily, slow down. But I want Claire to move in. Then she could be here all the time." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Claire set Lily down gently and said, "Because your dad and I are figuring some things out right now. Grown-up things." Lily wrinkled her nose. "Like boring stuff?" "Kind of." "Is it about you guys being in love?" Both of them froze. Lily looked between them, utterly unfazed. "Because you are, right? You've been in love forever." Ethan's brain short-circuited. Claire recovered first. "What makes you think that?" "Because you look at each other weird, and you're always together, and you make Dad happy." She said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Claire's eyes welled up. Ethan crouched down again and took Lily's hands. "You're right," he said quietly. "Claire and I, we love each other. But that means things are going to change a little. And we wanted to make sure you're okay with that." Lily tilted her head. "So you're like boyfriend and girlfriend now?" "Yeah, cool." That was it. Just cool. Like it was the easiest thing in the world. Lily looked at Claire. "Does this mean you're going to come over more?" Claire laughed through her tears. "Yeah, I think so." "And can we still do movie nights?" "Absolutely." "Okay, can I have pancakes now?" Ethan stared at his daughter, completely stunned. Then he started laughing, because of course Lily had known. Of course she'd seen it before either of them did. Kids always knew. They made pancakes together, all 3 of them, and the kitchen was loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Claire burned the first batch. Lily insisted on adding chocolate chips to everything. Ethan tried to supervise and mostly just got in the way. And when they finally sat down to eat, Lily announced that this was the best breakfast ever, and Claire squeezed Ethan's hand under the table. And he realized something. This was what home felt like. Not a place, a person, 2 people. Later that morning, after Lily went to her room to play, Claire and Ethan sat on the couch together, her head on his shoulder. "That went better than I expected," Claire said. "She's known for years, apparently. She's smarter than both of us." Ethan smiled. "Yeah, she is." They were quiet for a moment. Then Claire said softly, "I'm still scared." "Me too." "What if we mess this up?" "We probably will, at some point. That's not comforting." "I know." Ethan turned to look at her. "But we'll figure it out together." Claire searched his face. "You really mean that?" "Yeah, I do." She kissed him again, slow and gentle this time, and Ethan felt the last of his fears start to crack apart. Because this was real, and it was messy, and it was theirs. Over the next few weeks, they figured out what their new normal looked like. Claire started spending more time at Ethan's apartment. She brought her laptop and worked from his couch while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. She learned how to make actual coffee. She helped with bedtime routines and school projects and Sunday morning cartoons. Ethan, meanwhile, started letting himself believe that this could actually work. It wasn't perfect. Claire still worked too much. Ethan still panicked about money. They argued about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes and whether Lily was old enough for a later bedtime. But they also laughed more than Ethan had laughed in years. And when Claire stayed over, which was most nights now, Ethan would wake up in the middle of the night and find her asleep beside him. And he'd feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, safe. One night, about a month in, they were sitting on the couch after Lily had gone to bed, and Claire said out of nowhere, "I want to tell people about us." Ethan looked at her. "People already know." "Not everyone, I mean. I want to tell my team, my board. I want to stop hiding this." "You're not hiding." "I kind of am." She had turned to face him. "I've spent my whole life keeping my personal life separate from work, but I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to pretend you're just my friend when you're so much more than that." Ethan's chest tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want you to come to my company event next week, as my date. Officially." "Claire, that's a huge deal." "I know. People are going to talk. Let them." He stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely." Ethan didn't know what to say, because a month ago he'd been terrified of losing her. And now she was asking him to stand beside her in front of the people who mattered most in her professional life. "You don't have to," Claire said quickly. "If it's too much, I'll be there." She blinked. "Really?" "Yeah, really." Claire smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Ethan's entire world feel a little brighter. The event was black tie. Ethan didn't own anything black tie. He stood in his bedroom the night before, staring at his closet like it might magically produce a suit, and contemplated faking an illness. Claire found him there, looking panicked. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I don't have anything to wear." She looked at him like he'd just said the sky was green. "So we'll get you something." "Claire, suits are expensive. I'll buy it." "No." "Ethan, I'm not letting you buy me a suit." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a charity case." The words came out harsher than he meant them to, and Claire flinched. Ethan immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "No, I get it." Claire's voice was tight. "You don't want my money. You've made that very clear." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I don't want you to think you have to take care of me." "I don't think that." "Then why are you always trying to fix things?" "Because I care about you." They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Then Claire took a breath. "I'm not trying to fix you. Ethan, I'm trying to help. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." She stepped closer. "You think I look at you and see someone who needs saving? Because I don't. I see someone who works his ass off every single day to give his daughter a good life. I see someone who's strong and selfless and kind. And if I want to buy you a damn suit so you feel comfortable at an event that's important to me, it's not because I think you can't take care of yourself. It's because I love you and I want to do something nice." Ethan's throat closed up. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Claire softened. "I know this is hard for you. I know you're not used to letting people help. But I need you to trust me, okay? I'm not going anywhere. And you don't have to prove anything to me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I'll wear the suit," he muttered into her hair. She laughed. "Good." The next day, they went shopping. Ethan tried on approximately 17 different suits before finding one that fit, and the entire time Claire sat in a chair outside the dressing room, offering opinions and making him laugh. When he finally stepped out in the suit they both agreed on, Claire's eyes went wide. "Wow," she said. "It's just a suit. It's not just a suit. You look incredible." Ethan felt his face heat up. "Stop. I'm serious. You're going to be the best-looking person there." "That's definitely not true." It definitely is. He looked at himself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't see someone struggling. He just saw himself. The night of the event, Ethan was a nervous wreck. He triple-checked his tie. He made sure his shoes were clean. He kissed Lily goodnight and promised her he'd tell her all about it in the morning. And when Claire picked him up in a car that probably cost more than his annual salary, wearing a dress that made his brain stop working, he almost forgot how to breathe. "You ready?" she asked. "No," she smiled. "You'll be fine." The venue was stunning, all marble and gold and chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a museum. Ethan felt completely out of place, but Claire held his hand the entire time, introducing him to investors and board members and tech executives with the kind of confidence that made it clear she didn't care what anyone thought. "This is Ethan," she'd say, over and over. "My boyfriend." And every time she said it, Ethan's chest swelled a little more. Halfway through the night, a woman in an expensive pantsuit cornered them near the bar. "Claire, she said, her smile sharp. "I didn't know you were seeing anyone." "I am now," Claire said easily. The woman's eyes flicked to Ethan. "And what do you do?" "I work in hospitality," Ethan said. "How interesting." Her tone made it clear she thought it was anything but. Claire's hand tightened on his. "Ethan's also a single father. He's raising the most incredible kid I've ever met." The woman's smile faltered slightly. "Well," she said, "how lovely." Then she excused herself, and Ethan let out a breath. "I'm sorry about her," Claire muttered. "It's fine. It's not fine. She's a snob. Claire, it's okay. I knew what I was walking into." She looked at him, her expression fierce. "You're better than every single person in this room." "But that's not true." "It is to me." And just like that, Ethan stopped caring what anyone else thought, because Claire looked at him like he was enough, and that was all that mattered. They left the event early, both of them exhausted but happy. And on the drive back to Ethan's apartment, Claire reached over and laced her fingers through his. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said. "Thank you for inviting me." "I meant what I said earlier. You're better than all of them." Ethan smiled. "You're biased." "Maybe, but I'm also right." When they got back to his apartment, they found Lily still awake, sitting on the couch with Mrs. Chen, insisting she wasn't tired even though her eyes were half closed. "How was the party?" Lily asked through a yawn. "Boring," Claire said, sitting down beside her. "But your dad looked very handsome." Lily giggled. "He always looks handsome." Ethan grinned. "I'm keeping both of you." After Mrs. Chen left and Lily finally went to bed, Claire and Ethan collapsed on the couch together. "This is good," Claire said softly. "Us. This. All of it." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, it is." And for the first time in 8 years, he let himself believe it. 3 months into their relationship, Ethan woke up at 2 a.m. to find Claire's side of the bed empty. He'd gotten used to her being there, used to the way she stole the blankets and talked in her sleep sometimes, used to waking up and seeing her face first thing in the morning. So when she wasn't there, his chest immediately tightened with worry. He found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with her laptop open, the blue light washing over her face. "Claire?" She jumped, slamming the laptop shut. "Sorry, did I wake you?" "No, what are you doing?" "Working." "At 2 a.m? She rubbed her eyes. "I couldn't sleep." Ethan walked over and saw the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "How long have you been up?" "A while." "Define a while." "I never went to sleep." "Claire." I know. But we've got this acquisition meeting tomorrow and the numbers aren't adding up. And if I don't figure this out, come to bed." "I can't. I need to finish this." Ethan closed her laptop. She stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Taking care of you." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." He pulled her to her feet. "You're running yourself into the ground, and I'm not going to sit back and watch you do it." Claire's expression shifted into something defensive. "This is my job." "Ethan, this is what I do." "I know, but you can't work 24 hours a day." "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "Then help me understand." She pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "If this acquisition doesn't go through, we could lose everything I've built. 10 years of work, gone." "That's not going to happen." "You don't know that." Neither do you. Claire's jaw tightened. I can't afford to fail. Everyone fails sometimes. Not me. The words hung in the air, sharp and brittle. Ethan stared at her. You really believe that? I have to. Why? Because if I'm not perfect, then what's the point? Her voice cracked. I've spent my entire life proving I deserve to be where I am. That I earned it. That I'm not just lucky or in the right place at the right time. And if I slip even once, people will use it against me. Ethan's heart broke a little. Claire, nobody expects you to be perfect. Yes, they do. You have no idea what it's like being a woman in tech. Every mistake gets magnified. Every success gets questioned. I can't just be good. I have to be flawless. That's impossible. I know. Tears welled in her eyes. But I don't know how to stop. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and she collapsed against him, shaking. I'm so tired, she whispered. I know. I don't know how to do this. How to be both, the CEO and this, with you and Lily. I feel like I'm failing at everything. You're not failing. Then why does it feel like I am? Ethan held her tighter. Because you're trying to do everything alone, and you don't have to anymore. She pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. What if I can't do this? What if I can't balance it all? Then we'll figure it out together, but you have to let me help. Bravo. Claire wiped her eyes. I don't know how. Start by coming to bed. The acquisition will still be there in the morning. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. They went back to bed, and Claire curled up against him, her breathing eventually evening out as she fell asleep. But Ethan stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing something he should have seen earlier. Claire was scared, not of failure, of being human. The next morning, Claire's acquisition meeting went fine. Better than fine, actually. She came home that evening looking relieved but exhausted, and when Ethan asked how it went, she just said, "We got the deal." Then she collapsed on the couch and didn't move for an hour. Lily brought her a drawing of a rainbow, which seemed to help more than anything else. But over the next few weeks, Ethan started noticing a pattern. Claire would throw herself into work until she burned out. Then she'd crash. Then she'd feel guilty about crashing. Then she'd throw herself back into work even harder. And every time Ethan tried to talk to her about it, she'd deflect or change the subject, or insist she was fine. She wasn't fine. And Ethan didn't know how to help someone who refused to admit they needed it. One Saturday afternoon, while Claire was at the office again and Lily was at a birthday party, Ethan called Marcus. She's killing herself, Ethan said without preamble. Hello to you too. I'm serious. She works 16-hour days. She doesn't eat properly. She barely sleeps. And every time I try to talk to her about it, she shuts down. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You love her. What? You're in love with her, like actually in love. Not just we're dating in love, the real thing. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, I am. And it's terrifying. Yeah. Because you can't fix this for her. Ethan closed his eyes. No, I can't. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Marcus sighed. Look, man, I don't know Claire, but I know people like her. Overachievers, perfectionists. They don't know how to stop because stopping feels like giving up. And giving up feels like death. That's bleak. It's also true. And the only way they learn to slow down is if something forces them to. What do you mean? I mean, eventually, she's going to hit a wall. And when she does, you need to be there to catch her. That's all you can do. Ethan didn't like that answer, but he also knew Marcus was right. The wall came 2 weeks later. Claire had been working on a product launch that was supposed to be the biggest thing her company had ever done. A new platform. A complete overhaul of their existing systems. Something that would either make them industry leaders or destroy them completely. The pressure was immense, and Claire was handling all of it alone. Ethan barely saw her during those 2 weeks. She'd come over late at night, work on her laptop until she passed out, then leave early in the morning before Lily woke up. He tried to be understanding, but it was hard watching someone he loved disappear into their work and pretend everything was okay. The night before the launch, Claire didn't come over at all. Ethan texted her around 10. "Ethan, you okay?" No response. He tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. By midnight, he was worried. By 1 in the morning, he was getting Lily out of bed and driving to Claire's apartment. "Where are we going?" Lily asked sleepily from the back seat. "To check on Claire." "Is she okay?" "I don't know, kid." When they got to Claire's building, the doorman recognized Ethan and let them up without question. Ethan knocked on her door. No answer. He knocked harder. "Claire, it's me. Open up." Still nothing. He tried the handle. It was unlocked. That sent a spike of fear through him. He pushed the door open and found Claire's apartment dark, except for the glow of her laptop on the dining table. Claire was sitting in front of it, staring at the screen with a blank expression. "Claire?" She didn't respond. Ethan's heart sank. He walked over and crouched beside her chair. "Hey, look at me." Slowly, she turned her head. Her eyes were hollow. "I can't do it," she whispered. "Can't do what?" "Any of it. The launch. The company. I can't. I'm going to fail. And everyone's going to see it. And everything I've built is going to fall apart." Ethan took her hands. They were ice cold. "You're not going to fail. You don't know that. I know you. And I know you don't give up. Maybe I should." Her voice was so small it broke his heart. "Maybe I should just walk away before I destroy everything." "Claire, you're spiraling. I'm being realistic." "No, you're panicking. And you're exhausted. When was the last time you ate?" She blinked. "I don't remember." "When was the last time you slept?" "I don't know." Ethan stood and pulled her to her feet. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to eat something, then you're going to sleep. And tomorrow, we'll deal with the launch." "I can't sleep. I have too much—" "Claire." He cupped her face in his hands. "You're going to make yourself sick. Please, just let me take care of you for one night." She stared at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then she nodded. Ethan made her a sandwich while Lily sat on the couch, watching Claire with worried eyes. Claire ate half of it before giving up. Then Ethan led her to the bedroom and made her lie down. "I'll stay up and work," she said weakly. "No, you won't." "Ethan, I'm not leaving, and you're not getting up, so you might as well sleep." She was too tired to argue. Within minutes, she was out. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, watching her breathe, his chest tight. Lily appeared in the doorway. "Is Claire sick?" "Not exactly. She's just really tired. Because she works too much." "Yeah." Lily climbed onto the bed and curled up next to Claire, resting her head on Claire's shoulder. Claire shifted in her sleep, her arm coming around Lily instinctively, and Ethan felt something crack open in his chest, because this was his family, broken and messy and imperfect, but his. The launch the next day was a disaster, not because the product was bad, it was actually incredible, but Claire wasn't there. Ethan had convinced her to stay home, to let her team handle the presentation, and she'd agreed only because she was too exhausted to argue. She spent the entire day pacing her apartment, checking her phone every 30 seconds, convinced everything was falling apart without her. "They don't need me," she kept saying. "I should be there." "Your team is competent," Ethan said for the 10th time. "They can handle this. But what if something goes wrong? Then they'll fix it. I should be there to fix it." "Claire, you're one person. You can't carry an entire company on your shoulders." Tom. She stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression raw. "That's exactly what I've been doing for 10 years. I know, and it's killing you. So what am I supposed to do? Just let go? Pretend I don't care?" "No. You're supposed to trust the people you hired to do their jobs." Claire sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know how." Ethan sat beside her. "Then learn." By evening, the launch was over. Claire's VP called to tell her it had been a massive success. The platform was performing better than expected. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. The stock price had jumped. Everything had gone perfectly, without her. When Claire hung up, she looked shell-shocked. "They did it," she said quietly. "Told you. They didn't need me." "That's not true. They needed you to build the team, to create the vision, but they don't need you to micromanage every detail. Claire was silent for a long time. Then she said, I've been doing this wrong. What do you mean? I've been so scared of losing control that I never let anyone else help. I convinced myself I had to do everything alone or it wouldn't get done right. But all I did was burn myself out. Ethan took her hand. You don't have to do it alone anymore. She looked at him, her eyes wet. I don't know how to be any other way. Then I'll teach you. She laughed, the sound broken. You're a mess, Ethan. You can barely keep your own life together. Exactly. So I'm the perfect person to show you it's okay to be imperfect. Claire leaned against him, and they sat there in silence while the sun set outside her windows. After that night, things started to shift. Slowly, Claire began delegating more. She started leaving work at reasonable hours. She stopped checking her email at midnight. It wasn't easy. Some days she'd backslide. She'd work late or skip meals or convince herself she needed to be in control of everything. But Ethan was there, and so was Lily. And gradually, Claire started to understand that being successful didn't mean being perfect. It just meant being willing to try. One evening, about a month later, Claire showed up at Ethan's apartment with a bag of groceries and a determined expression. What's this? Ethan asked. I'm making dinner. You don't cook. I'm learning. Lily looked up from her homework, eyes wide. Really? Really? It was a disaster. Claire burned the chicken. She oversalted the vegetables. She somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm twice. But she laughed through all of it, and when they finally sat down to eat the semi-edible results, Lily declared it the best dinner ever, and Claire looked happier than Ethan had seen her in months. This is nice, Claire said later, after Lily had gone to bed. They were on the couch, her head on his shoulder, both of them exhausted. Yeah, Ethan agreed. I like being here. With you guys, it feels like home? She smiled. Yeah, like home. Ethan kissed the top of her head. You know, you could just move in. Claire went very still. What? Ethan's heart started pounding. He hadn't planned to say it. It had just come out. But now that it was out there, he realized he meant it. Move in, he said again. With us. This place is tiny, and my furniture's falling apart, and the rent's too high. But it's ours. And I want you to be part of it, officially. Claire sat up, staring at him. Are you serious? Yeah, Ethan, this is huge. I know. We've only been together for a few months. 4 months, almost 5. That's not very long. It's been 8 years, Claire. We've just been too scared to admit it. She opened her mouth, closed it. What about Lily? She asked finally. Lily asks me every other day when you're moving in. I think she'll survive. And you? Are you sure you want this? Ethan took her hands. I've never been more sure of anything. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I'm a mess, Ethan. I work too much. I'm controlling. I panic about everything. I know. And I'm going to drive you crazy. You already drive me crazy. She laughed through her tears. This is a terrible idea. Probably. We should wait. Be smart about this. We've been smart for 8 years. How'd that work out? Claire stared at him. Then she said, Okay. Ethan's heart stopped. Okay? Okay, I'll move in. He kissed her before she could change her mind, and Claire kissed him back. And for a few perfect seconds, nothing else mattered. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. This is insane, she said. Completely. I don't even know where all my stuff is going to go. We'll figure it out. Wodka. Your closet is the size of a shoebox, so we'll get rid of some of my stuff. And Lily's going to want to help me unpack everything. Definitely. Claire laughed. I can't believe I'm doing this. Neither can I. But they were, and somehow that made it perfect. Moving in was chaos. Claire had more stuff than Ethan had anticipated. Boxes and furniture and kitchen gadgets he didn't know existed. His apartment looked like a disaster zone for 2 weeks straight, but Lily loved every second of it. She helped Claire organize her clothes. She picked out which side of the closet Claire should use. She insisted Claire's books go on the crooked bookshelf they'd built together because it was special. And slowly, Claire's things merged with theirs. Her coffee maker next to his cheap kettle. Her work files stacked beside Lily's art supplies. Her shoes by the door next to his worn-out sneakers. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely nothing like Claire's pristine penthouse. But it was real. One night, after everything was finally unpacked, the three of them sat on the couch watching a movie Lily had picked out. Halfway through, Lily fell asleep between them. Claire looked down at her, then at Ethan. "I love this," she whispered. "Me too. I never thought I'd have this. A family. You have it now." She smiled, and Ethan saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Peace. But peace didn't last long. 2 months after Claire moved in, Ethan got a call from Lily's school. She'd gotten into a fight. When he arrived, the principal explained that Lily had punched another kid in the cafeteria. "Lily doesn't punch people," Ethan said, stunned. "Well, she did today." They brought Lily in, and she sat in the chair with her arms crossed, her face set in a stubborn expression Ethan recognized from Claire. "What happened?" Ethan asked gently. Lily didn't answer. "Lily, talk to me. He said something mean." "About who?" "About Claire." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "He said Claire's not my real mom, and that she's only here because she feels sorry for us." Ethan felt his chest tighten with anger. He looked at the principal. "And what did you say to the other kid?" "We're addressing both children equally." "That's not what I asked." The principal shifted uncomfortably. "The other student is also being disciplined for saying my daughter's family isn't real?" "Mr. Walker." "No. My daughter defended someone she loves, and you're treating her like she's the problem." The principal looked taken aback. "Violence is never acceptable." "Neither is bullying, but I notice you're not mentioning that part." They went back and forth for another few minutes before Ethan finally just took Lily home. She was quiet the entire drive. When they got to the apartment, Claire was already there, working from the kitchen table. She took one look at Lily's face and immediately closed her laptop. "What happened?" Ethan explained while Lily sat on the couch, staring at her hands. Claire's expression went from confused to hurt to furious in about 3 seconds. Then she walked over and sat down next to Lily. "Hey," she said softly. Lily didn't look up. "You know what that kid said isn't true, right?" Lily shrugged. "Lily, look at me." Slowly, Lily turned her head. Claire's eyes were wet. "I might not be your biological mom, but I love you like you're mine, and nothing anyone says can change that." "But you're not really my family," Lily whispered. "Yes, I am. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses to be there, even when things are hard. And I choose you, Lily, every single day." Lily's face crumpled, and she threw herself into Claire's arms. Claire held her tight, and Ethan watched them both, his throat closing up. Because that kid at school had been wrong. They were a family. A weird, imperfect, patched-together family. But a real one. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire sat at the kitchen table looking drained. "I didn't think it would bother me this much," she admitted. Ethan sat down across from her. "What?" "Someone questioning whether I belong here. With you guys. You do belong here. I know, but I spent so many years convincing myself I didn't need this, that I was fine alone. And now that I have it, I'm terrified someone's going to take it away." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Nobody's taking anything away." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Because I'm not going anywhere. And neither is Lily. We're yours, Claire, for as long as you want us." She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "Forever. I want you forever." Ethan's heart stopped. Then he stood, walked around the table, and pulled her to her feet. "Then you've got it," he said, and he kissed her like he meant it, because he did. The next few months were some of the best of Ethan's life. Work was still exhausting, money was still tight, the apartment was still too small, but none of that mattered, because when he came home, Claire was there, and Lily was there. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Claire started cutting back on work even more. She hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations. She took weekends off. She stopped checking email after 7. Her board thought she was losing her edge. She didn't care, because what she'd gained was worth so much more. One Saturday morning, the three of them were at the park. Lily was on the swings, and Claire was pushing her, laughing every time Lily shouted, "Higher!" Ethan sat on a bench nearby, watching them. And he realized something. He wanted to marry her. Not eventually, not someday. Now. The thought hit him so hard he actually stood up. Claire noticed. "You okay?" "Yeah, fine." But his heart was racing, because he was going to propose. He just had to figure out how. The problem with deciding to propose was that Ethan had absolutely no idea how to do it. He'd never proposed to anyone before. His relationship with Lily's mother had been a messy accident that ended badly, and he'd never gotten close enough to anyone else to even think about marriage. But Claire wasn't just anyone, and this had to be perfect, or at least not a complete disaster. He started researching online during his breaks at work, scrolling through articles about romantic proposals while refilling ketchup bottles and wiping down tables. Most of the suggestions were useless. Skywriting? He couldn't afford that. Flash mob? Absolutely not. Hiring a string quartet? In what universe did that make sense for them? Ethan closed his phone and stared at the greasy wall of the kitchen, feeling completely lost. "You good, man?" asked Derek, one of the line cooks. "Yeah, fine." "You've been staring at that wall for like 5 minutes." "Just thinking." Derek raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Ethan hesitated. Then, because he was desperate and Derek had been married for 15 years, he said, "How did you propose to your wife?" Derek's face lit up. "Oh man, it was terrible." "That's not encouraging." "No, I mean, it was actually terrible. I took her to this fancy restaurant I couldn't afford, spent the whole dinner sweating through my shirt, and when I finally got down on one knee, I knocked over the table and spilled wine all over her dress." Ethan winced. "What did she say?" "She laughed so hard she cried. Then she said yes." Derek grinned. "Point is, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." Ethan thought about that for the rest of his shift. Real. He could do real. The next day, Ethan went to see his mother. He hadn't told her about Claire yet. Not officially. They'd been meaning to visit, but between work and Lily's school schedule and everything else, it kept getting pushed back. His mom lived in a small house on the edge of the city, surrounded by a garden she spent way too much time fussing over. When Ethan showed up unannounced, she opened the door with dirt on her hands and suspicion in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong." "You never visit unless something's wrong." "That's not true." She gave him a look that said she knew exactly how true it was. Ethan sighed. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and Ethan followed her into the kitchen, which smelled like bread and coffee and home. "Sit," his mother said, already pouring him a cup. "Talk." Ethan sat. Then he said, "I'm going to propose to someone." His mother's hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. "Excuse me?" "Her name's Claire. She's incredible, Mom. She moved in with us a few months ago, and Lily loves her, and I—" He stopped, his throat tight. "I want to marry her." His mother set down the coffee pot and stared at him. "You're serious?" "Yeah. And this Claire, she's good to you? Good to Lily?" "She's everything." His mother's expression softened. "Then why do you look terrified?" "Because I don't have a ring. And I don't know how to do this right. And I'm scared I'm going to mess it up." His mother walked over and sat down across from him, taking his hands in hers. "Your grandmother's ring is in my jewelry box upstairs," she said quietly. "It's been waiting for you." Ethan's chest tightened. "Mom, I can't." "Yes, you can. She would have wanted you to have it. And more importantly, she would have wanted you to be happy." She squeezed his hands. "Are you happy, Ethan?" He thought about Claire, about the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, about the way she helped Lily with homework even when she was exhausted, about the way she fit into his life like she'd always been there. "Yeah, he said. "I really am." His mother smiled. "Then that's all that matters." She went upstairs and came back with a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't worth a fortune, but it was real, and it was perfect. Ethan stared at it, his vision blurring. "Thank you," he whispered. His mother pulled him into a hug. "Bring her by soon. I want to meet the woman who finally got through to you. I will. When Ethan left an hour later, the ring box felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his pocket. He had the ring. Now he just needed a plan. Over the next week, Ethan tried to figure out the perfect moment to propose. He considered doing it at the park where they'd first met, but that felt too public. He thought about doing it at home, but he wanted it to be special. He even briefly considered the penthouse where they'd built the bookshelf, but Claire had sold that place when she moved in with him. Nothing felt right. And the longer he waited, the more nervous he got. Claire started noticing. Are you okay? She asked one night while they were doing dishes. Yeah, fine. You've been weird all week. I haven't. Ethan, you put the milk in the cupboard yesterday. He winced. That was an accident. You've been distracted. Is something wrong? No, I'm just thinking about stuff. What stuff? Work stuff. Claire gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she let it drop, which made Ethan feel even worse, because he was lying to her, sort of. He wasn't lying about his feelings, but he was definitely hiding something, and Claire was too perceptive not to notice. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. Ethan woke up to find Claire already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with her arms wrapped around herself. Hey, he said, his voice rough with sleep. You okay? She didn't answer. Ethan sat up, fully awake now. Claire, what's wrong? Are you unhappy? She asked quietly. What? With us, with this, are you unhappy? Ethan's heart dropped. No, why would you think that, Barry? Because you've been pulling away. You're distracted all the time. You barely talk to me anymore. Her voice cracked. And I keep thinking maybe you realized this was a mistake, that moving in together was too fast, that I'm too much. Claire, I know I'm a lot. I know I'm difficult. And if you're having second thoughts, I need you to tell me now before I... Ethan pulled her into his arms, cutting her off. I'm not having second thoughts, he said fiercely. I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Then what's going on? He took a breath. Then he said, I want to marry you. Claire went completely still. What? I've been trying to figure out how to propose. That's why I've been weird. That's why I've been distracted. Because I've been carrying around my grandmother's ring for a week, trying to plan the perfect moment, and I keep screwing it up. Claire pulled back, staring at him with wide eyes. You want to marry me? Yes. Why didn't you just say that? Because I wanted it to be romantic. I wanted to do it right. Ethan, you idiot! She was crying now, but she was also smiling. You don't need some big romantic gesture. You just need to ask. Ethan's throat closed up. Then he got out of bed, walked to his dresser, and pulled out the ring box. When he turned back around, Claire had her hand over her mouth. Ethan dropped to one knee. This isn't how I planned this, he said. I wanted to take you somewhere special. Say something profound. But the truth is, there's no perfect moment, because every moment with you is already perfect. Claire let out a choked laugh. You're my best friend, Ethan continued. You've been my best friend for 8 years, and somewhere along the way you became my everything. You made me believe I deserved to be happy. You made Lily believe she deserved to be loved, and I don't want to spend another day without you being part of our family. Officially. He opened the box. So, Claire Bennett, will you marry me? Claire was full-on sobbing now. Yes, she said. Yes, yes, yes. Ethan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him, kissing him through her tears. When they finally pulled apart, Claire looked down at the ring, her expression soft. It's beautiful, she whispered. It was my grandmother's. Ethan, she would have loved you almost as much as I do. Claire kissed him again, and they stood there in their tiny bedroom, holding each other, and Ethan felt like his entire world had just clicked into place. A few seconds later, there was a knock on the door. Are you guys done being gross? Lily's voice called from the hallway. I'm hungry. Claire laughed, wiping her eyes. We should tell her. Yeah, we should. They opened the door and Lily stood there in her pajamas, looking annoyed. Finally, can we have pancakes now? In a minute, Ethan said. We need to tell you something first. Lily's eyes narrowed. What? Claire crouched down to her level. How would you feel if your dad and I got married? Lily blinked. Then her entire face lit up like someone had plugged her into an electrical socket. Really? Really? Lily screamed. Then she launched herself at both of them, nearly knocking them over. This is the best day ever, she shouted. Ethan laughed, catching her. I'll take that as a yes. Can I be in the wedding? Obviously. Can I wear a purple dress? Whatever you want, kid. Say. Lily pulled back, her expression suddenly serious. Does this mean Claire's going to be my real mom? Claire's eyes filled with tears again. If you want me to be. I do. I've always wanted you to be. And just like that, Ethan's heart broke and healed at the same time. They spent the rest of the morning making pancakes and talking about wedding plans that were way too elaborate for what they could actually afford. Lily wanted a castle, and horses, and a cake taller than her. Claire promised they'd figure something out. Ethan just sat there watching the two of them plan his wedding and thought about how 8 years ago he never could have imagined this. He'd been so sure he was going to be alone forever, and now he had everything he'd ever wanted. Later that afternoon, after Lily had gone to her friend's house for a playdate, Claire and Ethan sat on the couch together. Claire kept looking at the ring on her finger like she couldn't quite believe it was real. I need to tell my board, she said suddenly. Ethan looked at her. About us getting married? Yeah, and about stepping back even more. What do you mean? Claire took a breath. I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't want to be CEO anymore. Ethan's eyes widened. Claire, I don't mean I'm quitting. I just mean I want to transition into a different role. Maybe chair of the board. Something that gives me more flexibility. More time with you and Lily. Are you sure? That company is your life. No, it's not. It was, but not anymore. She looked at him. You and Lily are my life now, and I don't want to miss it because I'm working 80 hours a week. Ethan's chest tightened. Your board is going to lose their minds. Probably, but I don't care. I've spent 10 years building that company, and I'm proud of what I've done, but I'm ready to build something else now. What? This, us, a family. She smiled. I want to be there for Lily's school events. I want to have dinner with you every night. I want weekends that aren't consumed by work. I want a life, Ethan. A real one. He pulled her into his arms. I love you. I love you too. They sat there for a long time, just holding each other. And Ethan realized something. Claire wasn't giving up her career. She was choosing to live. And that was the bravest thing he'd ever seen. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Claire announced her transition at a board meeting, and exactly as predicted, several board members panicked. But Claire held firm. She promoted her COO to CEO, restructured her role, and made it clear she wasn't abandoning the company. She was just stepping back. Some people understood. Others didn't. Claire stopped caring what the others thought. Meanwhile, Ethan and Claire started planning the wedding, except they both quickly realized they didn't actually want a big wedding. The idea of a huge event with hundreds of people and elaborate decorations and months of planning felt exhausting. What they wanted was simple. Family, friends, something real. So they decided to get married in the backyard of the house they'd just started looking at. They'd been talking about moving for months. The apartment was too small now that Claire lived with them, and Lily needed more space. Claire wanted to buy something outright. Ethan wanted to contribute, even though he couldn't afford much. They compromised on a small house on the edge of the city with a yard big enough for Lily to run around in and a kitchen that actually fit more than 2 people. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, and the backyard had a crooked tree that reminded Ethan of the crooked bookshelf. Perfect and imperfect at the same time. They set the wedding date for 2 months out, which didn't leave much time, but neither of them wanted to wait. Ethan's mother helped with most of the planning. She knew people who knew people, and somehow she managed to pull together a small ceremony on a budget that didn't make Ethan want to cry. Claire's parents, who she barely spoke to, sent a card saying they couldn't make it. Claire pretended it didn't bother her. Ethan knew it did. I'm sorry, he said one night. For what? That your parents aren't coming. Claire shrugged. I stopped expecting things from them a long time ago. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, but I have you, and Lily, and your mom, who's been more of a parent to me in 2 months than mine ever were. She smiled. I'm not missing anything. Ethan pulled her close. They're idiots for not seeing how incredible you are. I know. He laughed despite himself. As the wedding got closer, Ethan found himself getting nervous. Not about marrying Claire. He'd never been more sure of anything, but about everything that came after. Marriage was permanent, and permanence was terrifying when you'd spent most of your life convinced nothing good ever lasted. One night, he couldn't sleep. He got up and went to the kitchen and found Claire already there, sitting at the table with a mug of tea. Can't sleep either? She asked. No. He sat down across from her. What are you thinking about? Claire asked. Everything. That's vague. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. What if I'm not good at this? At what? Being a husband. I've never done this before. What if I screw it up? Claire reached across the table and took his hand. You're going to screw it up sometimes. So am I. That's how marriage works. That's not reassuring, Doug. It's not supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be honest. She squeezed his hand. We're going to fight. We're going to make mistakes. There are going to be days when we annoy each other so much we want to scream, but we're also going to figure it out, together, because that's what we do. Ethan looked at her. You're not scared? I'm terrified, but I'm more scared of not doing this than I am of doing it. He smiled. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice. Fair. They sat there in the quiet kitchen, drinking tea and holding hands, and Ethan felt the fear start to ease, because Claire was right. They'd figure it out. Together. The day before the wedding, everything went wrong. The florist called to say half the flowers hadn't arrived. The bakery mixed up their order and made the wrong cake, and it started raining. Ethan stared out the window at the downpour and felt his stomach drop. It's fine, Claire said, even though she looked just as stressed as he felt. The ceremony's outside. We'll move it inside. Where? The house isn't ready yet. Then we'll do it here, in the apartment. Ethan looked around at their tiny living room. 20 people aren't going to fit in here. Then we'll make them fit. Claire. Ethan. She took his face in her hands. It doesn't matter where we get married. It doesn't matter if the flowers are perfect or the cake is right. All that matters is that at the end of tomorrow, we're married. Everything else is just details. He stared at her. Then he kissed her. How are you so calm right now? Because I've spent 10 years stressing about things that don't matter, and I'm done. The only thing that matters is you. Ethan pulled her into his arms and held her tight. I love you so much it's ridiculous. I know. I love you too. The next morning, the rain stopped, and by some miracle, everything came together. The flowers arrived, the bakery fixed the cake, and the backyard of their new house dried out just enough to set up chairs. Ethan stood under the crooked tree, wearing the suit Claire had bought him months ago, and watched people start to arrive. His mother, Marcus, who'd flown in from across the country, a handful of Claire's team members, some of Lily's friends, and their parents. It wasn't a lot of people, but it was enough. And then Claire appeared. She wasn't wearing a traditional wedding dress, just a simple white dress that hit just below her knees, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, not in a magazine-perfect way, just in a way that made Ethan forget how to breathe. Lily walked beside her, wearing the purple dress she'd insisted on, holding Claire's hand and grinning like she'd won the lottery. When they reached the tree, Lily let go of Claire's hand and ran to Ethan. You look fancy, Dad, she whispered. So do you, kid. Then Claire stepped up beside him, and Ethan forgot about everyone else. The ceremony was short. Ethan's mother officiated because, of course, she did. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Claire went first. 8 years ago, I met you in an elevator, she said, her voice shaking slightly. And I thought you were just some guy who told bad jokes to distract me from panicking. But you were so much more than that. You've been my best friend, my safe place, my home. And I promise to love you exactly as you are. Messy, imperfect, and perfect all at once. Ethan's throat was so tight he could barely speak. But he managed. I spent years looking for something I thought I needed, he said. And the whole time, you were right there. You made me believe I deserved to be happy. You made Lily believe she deserved to be loved. And I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much you mean to us. Not because you're successful or brilliant or any of those things, though you are, but because you're you, and that's all I've ever needed. Claire was crying, so was his mother. So was half the backyard, honestly. They exchanged rings. His mother pronounced them married. And Ethan kissed his wife while everyone cheered and Lily screamed, "Finally!" The reception was just as simple. They didn't have a DJ or a fancy dinner or elaborate decorations. They had takeout pizza and a playlist Lily had helped make, and a cake that was slightly lopsided but tasted incredible. And it was perfect. At some point, Ethan's mother pulled him aside. "Your grandmother would have been so proud of you," she said, wiping her eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "I mean it. You've built a beautiful life." Ethan looked across the yard at Claire, who was dancing with Lily to a song that was way too fast for a slow dance. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I really have." Later that night, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep in her new room, Ethan and Claire stood in their backyard looking up at the stars. "We did it," Claire said. "Yeah, we did. Whoa. I'm your wife now. Still getting used to that." She laughed. "Me too." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Claire said, "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" What do you mean?" "If you hadn't made that joke about marrying me, what if we'd never said anything? What if we just stayed friends forever?" Ethan thought about it. Then he said, "I don't think we would have. I think eventually we would have figured it out. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe it would have been messier. But I think we were always going to end up here." Claire looked at him. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." She smiled and leaned against him. "I'm glad we didn't wait any longer." "Me too." They stood there under the stars in the backyard of their imperfect house, and Ethan realized something. He'd spent so many years thinking happiness was something other people had, something he didn't deserve. But he'd been wrong. Happiness wasn't something you found. It was something you built, one crooked bookshelf at a time. 6 months into married life, Ethan woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of Claire throwing up in the bathroom. He stumbled out of bed, his heart already racing, and found her kneeling on the tile floor looking miserable. "Hey," he said softly, crouching beside her. "You okay? Do I look okay?" "Fair point." He got her a glass of water and sat with her until the nausea passed, his hand rubbing circles on her back. "This is the 3rd time this week," he said carefully. "I know. Maybe you should see a doctor." Claire looked at him, her face pale. "I already did." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What?" "Yesterday, while you were at work." "And?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hit him like a freight train. "You're—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Claire nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know we didn't plan this. I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring out being married, and the house isn't even fully unpacked, and—" Ethan kissed her. When he pulled back, he was grinning like an idiot. "We're having a baby?" "Yeah, we are." "That's incredible." Claire blinked. "You're not freaking out?" "I'm terrified, but I'm also really, really happy." She let out a choked laugh. "Me too, I think." They sat on the bathroom floor together, holding each other, and Ethan felt his entire world shift again. Another kid. A baby. With Claire. It was terrifying and overwhelming and absolutely perfect. When they told Lily the next morning, her reaction was immediate. "Can I name it?" "Absolutely not," Ethan said. "Why not?" "Because you wanted to name the goldfish Batman." "That's a great name," Claire laughed, still looking a little green. "How about you help us make a list of names instead?" Lily considered this. "Can one of them be Batman?" "No." "Fine, but I get to teach the baby stuff." "Like what?" Ethan asked. "Important things, like how to draw dinosaurs and which cereals are the best, and how to annoy you when you're being boring." Ethan pulled her into a hug. "You're going to be a great big sister." Lily hugged him back, then pulled away and looked at Claire seriously. "Are you scared?" Claire crouched down to her level. "Yeah, a little." "Me too. But Dad says it's okay to be scared as long as you do it anyway." Claire's eyes filled with tears. Your dad's pretty smart. Sometimes. The pregnancy was not easy. Claire was sick constantly for the first 3 months. She couldn't keep food down, couldn't sleep properly, and spent most of her time either working from the couch or passed out in bed. Ethan tried to help as much as he could, but juggling work, Lily, and taking care of Claire was exhausting. Some days, he felt like he was barely holding it together. One particularly bad night after Claire had been throwing up for hours, and Lily had a meltdown about homework, and Ethan burned dinner so badly the smoke alarm went off. He locked himself in the bathroom and just sat on the floor. He didn't cry. He just sat there, completely overwhelmed, wondering how the hell he was supposed to do this. There was a soft knock on the door. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small. "Are you okay?" Ethan took a breath. "Yeah, kid. I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." He opened the door. Lily stood there in her pajamas, looking worried. "I'm sorry I yelled about homework," she said. "You don't have to apologize." "But you looked sad." Ethan pulled her into a hug. "I'm not sad, just tired." "Because of the baby?" "A little bit." Lily pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Claire says it's okay to ask for help when things are hard." "She's right. So maybe you should ask for help, Ed." Ethan stared at his daughter, who was somehow wiser than he'd ever been, and realized she was absolutely right. He couldn't do this alone. He didn't have to. The next day, he called his mother. She showed up that weekend with groceries and cleaning supplies and a determination to help that made Ethan want to cry with relief. She cooked meals they could freeze. She helped with laundry. She took Lily to the park so Ethan could sit with Claire. And when Ethan tried to thank her, she just waved him off. "This is what family does," she said simply. By the 4th month, Claire started feeling better. The nausea eased, her energy came back, and she started getting excited about the baby in a way that made Ethan fall in love with her all over again. They turned the spare room into a nursery. It was a disaster at first. Ethan tried to assemble the crib and ended up with leftover pieces he couldn't identify. Claire attempted to paint the walls a soft yellow and somehow got more paint on herself than the wall. Lily insisted on adding stickers everywhere, including the ceiling, but eventually it came together, crooked and imperfect and exactly right. One evening, they were sitting in the nursery together, surrounded by half-assembled furniture and paint cans, and Claire said quietly, "I keep thinking about my parents." Ethan looked at her. "Yeah? I don't want to be like them, distant and cold and completely disconnected from my kid's life." "You won't be." "How do you know?" "Because you're already not. You're here. You're present. You care." He took her hand. "That's all that matters." Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. "What if I mess up?" "You will. So will I. But we'll figure it out." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She smiled. "I love you." "I love you too." Lily appeared in the doorway holding a stuffed dinosaur. "Can the baby have this?" Claire's eyes went soft. "You sure? That's your favorite." "Yeah, but babies need dinosaurs." Ethan pulled Lily into his lap. "You're going to be the best big sister in the world." "I know." As Claire's due date approached, Ethan found himself getting more and more anxious. He'd done this before with Lily, but that had been different. He'd been younger, less aware of everything that could go wrong. Now he knew too much. He knew about complications, about emergencies, about all the things that could happen during delivery, and it terrified him. One night, he couldn't sleep. He got up and went to the nursery, standing in the doorway and staring at the empty crib. Claire found him there. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No." She came and stood beside him, her hand on her swollen belly. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything that could go wrong." Ethan, I know it's probably fine. But what if it's not? What if something happens to you or the baby? What if—" Claire took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "I'm scared too," she said quietly. "But we can't control everything. We can't prevent every bad thing from happening. All we can do is show up and hope for the best." "That's not very comforting." "I know, but it's all we've got." Ethan pulled her close, careful of her stomach, and held her. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "You're not going to lose me. I'm too stubborn to go anywhere." He laughed despite himself. The baby came 2 weeks early. Ethan was at work when Claire called, her voice tight with pain. My water just broke. Ethan's heart stopped. I'm on my way. He left work immediately, called his mother to pick up Lily, and drove to the hospital faster than was probably legal. By the time he got there, Claire was already in a delivery room, hooked up to monitors and looking pale. Hey, he said, taking her hand. Hey, how are you doing? I've been better. The next several hours were a blur. Contractions, breathing exercises. Claire squeezing his hand so hard he thought she might break it. The doctors were calm, but Ethan could see the concern in their eyes when the baby's heart rate dropped. We might need to do a C-section, one of them said. Claire looked terrified. Ethan held her hand tighter. It's going to be okay. You don't know that. I know you, and you're the strongest person I've ever met. You've got this. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she nodded. 15 minutes later, they wheeled her into surgery. Ethan sat in the waiting room, his hand shaking, praying to anyone who might be listening that his wife and baby would be okay. It felt like hours. Finally, a nurse came out. Mr. Walker? Ethan shot to his feet. Is she okay? Is the baby okay? The nurse smiled. They're both fine. You have a healthy baby boy. Ethan's knees almost gave out. Can I see them? Come with me. Well, they led him to a recovery room, and there was Claire, looking exhausted and beautiful, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. Ethan walked over, his vision blurring. Hey, Claire said softly. Hey. She shifted the baby so Ethan could see his face. He was tiny, red-faced and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. He's beautiful, Ethan whispered. You want to hold him? Ethan nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Claire carefully handed him the baby, and Ethan looked down at his son, this tiny person who hadn't existed a few hours ago, and felt his entire world rearrange itself. What should we name him? Claire asked. They'd made lists, argued over dozens of options, but now, looking at his son, only one name felt right. James, Ethan said quietly. After my grandfather. Claire smiled. James Walker, I like it. Ethan sat down in the chair beside her bed, still holding James, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. All the fear, all the doubt, all the times he'd been convinced he didn't deserve this. And now here he was, married to his best friend, father to 2 incredible kids, living a life he'd never thought possible. When they brought James home a few days later, Lily was waiting on the porch, practically vibrating with excitement. Can I see him? Can I hold him? Does he like dinosaurs yet? Slow down, kid, Ethan said, laughing. They went inside, and Ethan carefully showed Lily how to hold her baby brother. She sat on the couch, her face serious with concentration, and stared down at James like he was the most important thing in the world. He's really small, she said. He'll get bigger. Can I teach him stuff? When he's older. Yeah. Lily looked up at Ethan. I'm going to be the best big sister ever, boss. I know you are. The first few months with a newborn were brutal. James didn't sleep, which meant no one slept. Claire was recovering from surgery and trying to navigate breastfeeding, which was way harder than anyone had warned them about. Ethan was working double shifts again to cover the medical bills, coming home exhausted only to help with night feedings. Lily was struggling with the adjustment, acting out in ways she never had before because she wasn't getting as much attention. There were days when Ethan thought he might actually lose his mind. One particularly bad night, after James had been screaming for 3 hours straight, and Lily had thrown a tantrum about bedtime, and Claire had locked herself in the bathroom crying, Ethan stood in the kitchen and seriously considered just walking out the door. Not permanently, just for 5 minutes. Just to breathe. But he didn't, because that wasn't what you did when you loved people. You stayed. Even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He made coffee instead, checked on Claire, got Lily to bed, and took over with James so Claire could sleep. And when the sun came up and James finally fell asleep, Ethan sat in the nursery holding his son and thought about his own father. The man who'd left when Ethan was 10, who'd decided being a parent was too hard and just walked away. Ethan had spent his whole life terrified he'd turn out the same way, that when things got difficult, he'd run. But he hadn't. He'd stayed. And he was going to keep staying. Slowly, things got easier. James started sleeping for longer stretches. Claire healed. Lily adjusted to being a big sister and actually started helping with the baby. And Ethan realized something. He was happy. Not in a perfect everything is great way, but in a real messy this is my life way. One Saturday morning, about 6 months after James was born, Ethan woke up to find the bed empty. He got up and found Claire in the kitchen, making pancakes while James sat in his bouncer on the floor and Lily set the table. "Morning," Claire said, smiling at him. "What's all this?" "Breakfast. It's Saturday." "I know, but you usually sleep in on Saturdays." "James woke me up, figured I'd make it productive." Ethan walked over and kissed her. "You're incredible." "I know." "Oh." They ate breakfast together as a family, James making happy gurgling sounds from his bouncer, Lily talking a mile a minute about her upcoming school play, Claire looking more relaxed than Ethan had seen her in months. After breakfast, Claire suggested they go to the park. It was one of those perfect spring days, warm but not too hot, with a breeze that made everything feel lighter. They walked to the park near their house, Lily running ahead while Ethan pushed James in the stroller, and Claire walked beside him. When they got there, Lily immediately ran to the swings. Ethan and Claire sat on a bench, watching her. "You remember the first time we came here?" Claire asked. Ethan smiled. "When Lily was 3 and you pushed her on the swings for an hour because I was too tired to move?" "I was exhausted too, but she was so happy I couldn't say no." You've always been like that with her." "Like what?" "Like she's yours, even before we got married, even before we were together." Claire's eyes went soft. "She's always felt like mine." Ethan reached over and took her hand. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching Lily play, and Ethan thought about how different his life looked now compared to a year ago. A year ago, he'd been terrified of losing Claire, terrified of admitting how he felt, terrified of wanting something he was convinced he couldn't have, and now she was his wife, the mother of his son, the person he came home to every single day. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked. "How lucky I am." "You're not lucky. You worked for this." "So did you." She smiled. "Yeah, I guess we both did." Later that afternoon, after they'd gotten home and put James down for a nap, Ethan found Claire in the living room, staring at the crooked bookshelf. It was still there, still leaning slightly to the left, still holding an odd assortment of books and photos and Lily's drawings. "We should probably replace that thing," Ethan said. Claire shook her head. "No way. That bookshelf is staying forever. It's a safety hazard. It's our safety hazard." She walked over and ran her fingers along the edge. "This is where it all started. When you made that stupid joke about marrying me. But best joke I ever told. Worst joke you ever told. But I'm glad you told it anyway." Ethan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Me too." They stood there for a moment, just holding each other. Then Claire said, "Do you ever regret it? Any of it?" "No. Do you? Not even a little bit. Even the parts that were hard?" "Especially the parts that were hard. Because those are the parts that made us real." Ethan kissed the side of her head. "I love you." "I love you too, Ikyung." That night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan and Claire sat on the back porch together, watching the stars. "I've been thinking," Claire said. "About what?" "About how different my life is now. A year ago, I was working 80 hours a week and convinced that was the only way to be successful. And now I'm here with you and the kids, and I don't even miss it." "You don't miss work?" "I didn't say that. I love my job. But it's not my whole life anymore, and I'm okay with that. More than okay." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For learning how to be imperfect." Claire laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I've got." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know what's funny? I spent so many years thinking I had to be perfect to deserve love. That if I showed any weakness or made any mistakes, people would leave. And then you came along and loved me anyway. Messy and scared and completely falling apart. You've never been falling apart." "Yes, I have. Multiple times." "Okay, yeah, fair." She elbowed him gently. "But you stayed. Even when it was hard. Even when I was difficult. You stayed." "Of course I did. That's what you do when you love someone." Claire turned to look at him. I used to think love was something you had to earn, but it's not, is it? It's just something you give and hope the other person gives it back. Yeah, I think so. And we did. We gave it back. Ethan pulled her close. We really did. They sat there in the quiet, holding each other. And Ethan realized something. This was it. This was the life he'd been searching for without even knowing it. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And his. A few weeks later, Ethan was cleaning out the garage when he found an old box of photos. He opened it and started flipping through. Pictures of Lily as a baby. Pictures of him and Claire from years ago, back when they were just friends. Pictures of moments he'd almost forgotten. And at the bottom of the box, he found a photo from the night they'd built the bookshelf. Claire was sitting on the floor, laughing at something he'd said, her hair messy and her face free of makeup. And Ethan was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He stared at that photo for a long time, because that was the moment he should have known, the moment everything changed, even though he'd been too scared to see it. He brought the photo inside and showed it to Claire. She looked at it and smiled. We look happy. Boom. We just didn't know it yet. I knew, Claire said softly. I think I always knew. Ethan pulled her close. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was terrified. I thought if I told you how I felt, you'd leave. And losing you as a friend felt worse than never having you as anything more. I was thinking the exact same thing. We're idiots. Complete idiots. She laughed, and Ethan kissed her, and they stood there in their kitchen, holding each other, while their kids played in the other room. And Ethan thought about all the people out there who were still searching. Still convinced that love was something you found in someone new, someone different, someone you hadn't met yet. When maybe, just maybe, it was already there, standing right beside you, hiding in plain sight for years, waiting for you to be brave enough to see it. Because the truth was, the greatest love stories weren't about strangers who met and fell instantly, perfectly in love. They were about people who showed up, who stayed, who chose each other every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And sometimes those people had been there all along. You just had to stop running long enough to notice. Ethan looked at Claire, at this woman who'd been his best friend for 8 years before becoming his everything, and he finally understood. Love wasn't something you searched for in the distance. It was something you built. One moment at a time, one choice at a time, one crooked bookshelf at a time. And it was messy and imperfect and sometimes really, really hard. But it was also the most beautiful thing he'd ever known, because it was real, and it was theirs. And that was more than enough.